Sales Rep Radio.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan Walker, and this is Sales Rep Radio, a presentation of timeless sales tips and best practices from some of the world's best professional sales consultants. The money-making news you need starts right here. Let's get rolling.
Hot tips, Sales Rep Radio.
Ever walk out of a client meeting and shake your head, thinking it was a total waste of time? Just didn't click. Well, guess what? Your client is thinking exactly the same thing. They can't all be home runs, but you can take more control over the situation and increase your odds of success. Longtime sales management consultant and author of the book Level 5 Selling, John Hoskins, is standing by to explain. John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
John, you've spent a great deal of time studying sales professionals in the context of the sales call, identifying what works in the real world and what ends up being a big time waster for both the client and the sales rep. Set the table for us.
Well, the research is all field-based. It's not calling people up and asking them about quality sales calls or doing surveys online. It's actually being out in the field with sales leaders and salespeople and watching sales calls. And I think in my career, I've probably seen in excess of 2,500 sales calls. It's a really great way to learn because you're not carrying the call. You are able to watch the customer and the signals they're giving. You're able to watch the sales rep and maybe the signals they're missing. And the first premise is that about 60% of all the sales calls that are made are scrap and waste. They don't work.
Scrap and waste, ladies and gentlemen. Not only does it sound unsavory, but it certainly doesn't do much for your bottom line as a sales rep.
You know, a lot of people always say to me, Dan, hey, Hoskins, that's BS. You know, I don't have that much scrap and waste in my force. And I said, well, you know, let me prove it to you. So conceptually, I think the sales function is probably the last function in most businesses where quality or Six Sigma type standards haven't been brought to the function. And if it were, I think what the quality experts would say to you is, you know, the most measurable output of a sales force and the money we spend on sales and marketing is a sales call. That is what we produce. Regardless if it's a product, a service, whatever's being sold, the questions that they would ask would say, well, how many calls did you produce? What were the quality of those calls against some specification? What did it cost you to make them? And who's inspecting that on the line? A call begins that whole sales process. If you start with a bad call, your forecast is going to be inaccurate. You're going to miss quota. The quality of that call is the metric that people ought to be paying attention to.
Well, help us get on track, John. Where should our heads be when we're preparing for a great call?
You know, I was a student of Neil Rackham when I was at Xerox. I actually was trained by him in his spin selling program, which is still a preeminent program in the marketplace. But Neil's definition of a quality call is one I love, where he says, a quality call is something where your client would say, you know, I would have paid for Dan to make that call on me. If you think about it, if you didn't create value on that call for the customer, you're essentially wasting their time. And if you're wasting their time, they're probably not going to buy from you.
We need to think seriously about how to hit a chord with your customer on that call. And it's really the framework of your analysis.
In the model that I present in the book, there's a level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The behaviors that are associated with each of those levels are actually behaviors that a customer would observe and say, this is what I'm seeing the sales rep do or not do. That's either supporting my assumptions about working with them and buying from them or not. I'll give you an example. Our level 3, we call that the technical teller. The technical teller is a sales rep who kind of thinks his job is customer education. I'm in the market for a new car right now, so I've visited maybe 10 dealerships in the last month. To a certain extent, I'd say the car industry deserves the reputation that it has for terrible salespeople. With one exception, 9 of the 10 dealerships I visited, the sales rep was so bad, I had a hard time staying there and dealing with them. All they wanted to do was tell me about the features of the car, many of which meant nothing to me. They never asked me, why are you in the market for a new car? What about your existing car do you currently like or enjoy? What about the car don't you like or enjoy? Are you thinking about getting the same kind of car, or are you going to move into a different kind of car? It just astounds me they don't ever ask you what you want or what you need. So I actually got to the point, Dan, where I was going in and I was saying to them, here are my buying criteria for a new car. I am in the market for a new car. This is what I'm looking for. And they go, okay, let me show you this car. And they'd start telling me all about features, many of which had nothing to do with my needs.
9 lousy experiences with cookie-cutter features and benefit type sales folks. What about that 10th experience? What set him apart?
Well, it was interesting. This guy was in the first cubicle, happened to be an Infiniti dealership, one of the dealerships I was looking at. I've never owned an Infiniti. I've always owned Lexus. Well, this guy, he had all the trophies in his cubicle, Salesman of the Year, Top Gun, all this kind of stuff. And first thing he did, he said, look, before we go out on the showroom floor, we can sit down and ask you a couple of questions. And I thought, well, this is refreshing. So we sit down, he said, like a beverage, like a Coke or, water? I said, yeah, water would be great, right? So he said, so John, tell me, what brings you to the dealership today? Why are you looking for a new car? Totally different dialogue, correct? He distinguished himself from all the others. Now, to be honest, I still haven't bought a car. If I ever was going to buy a car from an Infiniti guy, I would buy a car from him. But I haven't made my decision. Also, Dan, he was the only guy who followed up. Many of these guys never got my name or phone number. Now, I'm using the car dealership. That's a B2C situation. But all of us every day in our life encounter salespeople and service people. For me, I feel like I'm a sales voyeur. I can't help myself. I see sales interactions, and I get calls as a business owner that drive me crazy. Altruistically, one of the reasons I wrote this book, I hope that somehow it transforms the profession of sales so that people actually have a better perception of salespeople in general. Because a lot of people still think salespeople are a little oily, count your fingers after you shake your hand, that kind of thing.
Can you talk for a minute, John, about the state of sales management today? Are managers today really dialed into the most effective ways to mentor their reps?
The most stated sales metric for managers is to spend 50% of the time in the field riding with reps. For me, when I was at Xerox, that was a stated objective. If you didn't hit it, you were in trouble. I learned more when my manager traveled with me than I ever did in any kind of sales training program. Because you have that pre-call plan, you observe the call, you pull over, you go to a coffee shop, you debrief the call. That's where the learning takes place. Now, the problem is twofold. One is managers don't hit that standard very often. So I've talked to reps. I say, when was the last time your manager traveled with you in the field? He hasn't traveled with me in the field for maybe a year. Really? No. So my thought is you have to fix this problem yourself. So from a self-coaching point of view, you can walk out of a call and you can right away, you can say, I wonder what level I was at. Was I at a level 1, level 2, level 3? You know what? I was kind of at level 3. But what did I need to do differently to make that a level 4 or level 5 call? Well, I could have done this and that. I'm going to work on that in the next call. I'm going to try to do those two things better. Because levels 1, 2, and 3, they don't advance a sale and they rarely end in a sale.
So our goal is to be at level 4 or 5 for your client meetings as defined in your book, John, but I got to believe that to get there requires some homework before the call.
Well, use the word there, homework, that I want to emphasize. It's something that distinguishes a level 5 seller from others. I was on a call yesterday myself with a former client who's now at a new business. He's a CEO, brought along his VP of sales. He wants to transform the sales culture. When we left the parking lot, he turned to me and said, John, I was really impressed by the amount of pre-call work you had done about my new business. So many reps don't do that. This week, I got a call from a sales rep. I'm a sucker for webinars. I sign up for them because I'm always learning. As I sign up for this webinar, afterwards they say, if you want to take this seminar from this guy, register here. We'll call you for follow-up, and we'll tell you about the details. I get the follow-up call. The guy says to me, hi, John, I wanted to check in with you today, tell you a little bit more about the seminar we're offering, and find out more about your business. So I said, oh, really? I said, have you been to my website? I gave that to you when I registered. No, I haven't been to your website. Have you looked at my LinkedIn profile? No, I don't have time to look at LinkedIn profiles. I got 40 people here I got to call. I said, you know what? I got to take myself out of this. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, how can you possibly call a person today and say, tell me about your business?
Really no excuse for it. All that info is now literally at your fingertips.
In a lot of cases, I think the prospect knows more about you than you know about them and your product and what it costs and who your competitors are.
That's right. Now, you provided a roadmap for us to ascend to that level 5 sales call through your years of experience in your book, Level 5 Selling. How do we get our hands on that?
go to Amazon, plug in Level 5 Selling, and it'll pop up. And the website is level5selling.com.
John Hoskins, a pleasure. Hope you'll come back and see us again soon here on Sales Rep Radio.
Thanks very much, Dan. Pleasure being with you.
That's it for now, folks. Sales Rep Radio is a production of the Marcom Store, the place for strategic sales communications and training, e-learning, video, and corporate podcasts just like this one. This is Dan Walker. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and we'll see you again next time for another edition of Sales Rep Radio.